Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our session of wellness and faith tonight. We are excited tonight to be discussing this conversation, and we have with us an expert in the field of wellness. We first want to welcome you to this session. I want to greet you on behalf of our pastor, Reverend Dr. Willie Dwayne Francois III, who is on leave at this time, but has sent me to send greetings to Jaime and appreciate you for joining us tonight. Tonight we have with us Jaime Angelini from the Mental Health Association of New Jersey, who is the statewide director of disaster services, and she has been in this organization for 20 years, so she is indeed an expert. And so Jaime, you will tell us a little bit more about your background, but we do want to tie this to how does wellness, how does well-being, how does this understanding of our mental health associate or connect with faith. And in the book of 3rd John, it says, John says, "Beloved, I wish above all that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." And so this idea of both our physical well-being and our mental well-being, our emotional well-being is all tied together, and it is definitely a biblical principle. But not only that, but the idea of shalom, right? The concept of shalom. We had a guest preacher this past Sunday, Reverend Dr. Charles Goodman Jr. was sharing with us and helping us understand shalom, this perpetual well-being, perpetual wellness, this balance, understanding that we may have bad things that happen in our life, but we have enough good things in our life that it balances out, that we can maintain a place of peace in our lives. And so Jaime is going to help us tonight with just some of where we've been over the past 16 months and how we can get to this place of shalom, of peace, of well-being. And so, Jaime, I want to go ahead and turn it over to you for those who are listening tonight. And we ask that you would just come as you see fit.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful opening, and good evening, everyone. As said, my name is Jaime Angelini, and I am with the Mental Health Association in New Jersey, where I have been the last 20 years living and working in Atlantic County, although I am the statewide director of disaster services. And what, you could imagine what that really means is that we've been pretty busy this year. We are looking at COVID-19 as a disaster. So a lot of the work that I've been doing is providing crisis counseling and emotional support to those who have been impacted by COVID-19. So I thank you for having me. Our organization, the Mental Health Association, has been around for 75 years here in New Jersey, providing services. We provide support, education, and advocacy to adults and families who've been impacted by mental health challenges and by substance use disorders. Our statewide headquarters is in Union County, up north, but we do have regional offices right here in Atlantic County, in Ocean County, and in Hudson County. And then we have some really wonderful affiliates around the state in Passaic, Monmouth, Morris, and Essex. Again, all providing support, education, and advocacy for people who have been touched and impacted by mental illness and mental health challenges. So tonight we're talking about well-being, we're talking about wellness, we're talking about self-care, and really focusing on mental health in the age of COVID-19. We can't ignore we've had a very difficult 16 months, year and a half. So in our time together, we have about an hour together. We're going to talk about emotional health and the impact of COVID, recognizing the effects of stress on all of us, and then identifying well-being and very practical self-care strategies. Things that I always say, things that but things that are a great reminder. And then understanding how we survive, how we adapt, how we evolve and grow beyond the pandemic, kind of looking at post-pandemic wellness. So we all have mental health. Our emotional health can range from thriving, doing really well, to sometimes struggling and everything in between. So no matter what you're experiencing, please think about tonight taking action to support yourself and those around you. One of the things that I always focus on when I get to speak to an audience like this is how we together can reduce stigma, how we can increase mental health literacy and just getting people to talk about mental health. Typically, we all have mental health. We do not all have mental illness. We do not all have mental health challenges, but we all have mental health. And if we can talk about it typically, if we can focus on it the same way we do our physical health, we can move forward. And then for those that are in need of asking for support, we'll be more likely to do that. We're going to watch just a very short clip. This is something that was put together by Mental Health America, which is our parent organization. And it really focuses on this idea, this concept, this philosophy of before stage 4. So take a look at this with me, and then we'll come right back.
Our brains control how we act in the world. But did you know the world around us also affects our brains? Our genes, environment, and social interactions all work together to shape the way our brains develop. Sometimes these factors combine in ways that create unhealthy thoughts or feelings. Over time, these unhealthy thoughts and feelings become so unmanageable that we need outside support to get better. 50% of people will develop at least one mental health condition during their lifetime, and half of those people will develop a mental health condition by age 14. Unfortunately, it takes about 10 years for people to get the treatment they need. We don't wait to treat health problems like heart disease or cancer until stage 4. We shouldn't wait to take care of our mental health. The right early treatment can change lives, reducing school dropout rates, hospitalization, incarceration, and unemployment. Imagine what the world would look like if we all got the help we needed when we first started showing the early warning signs. Start the conversation before stage 4. Visit mentalhealthamerica.net to get informed, take an online screening, and better understand your own mental health.
So thank you for watching that with me. And, I will ask, was there anything in that video that stuck out? And you can go ahead and put that in the chat, anything that will kind of stay with you. Sometimes people will say, I didn't realize half of all mental health disorders started by age 14, or I didn't really think about the idea that people wait 10 years to reach out for support. So if there is something that, will kind of stick with you from that video, go ahead and write it in the chat, share it with everybody. We know that people do wait. They wait long to reach out for support. And that's the reason why we want to have these conversations. So as we start to talk a little bit about our mental health and COVID-19, we know that no one who lives through a disaster is untouched by the experience. And like I said, we are talking about COVID-19 as a disaster. A lot of the work that I've done over the years is disaster mental health, responding after a disaster. I did a lot of response work after Superstorm Sandy, helping people, providing emotional support. And individuals, although this is a very different disaster, did have very similar reactions. And no matter what you're experiencing, there's always support available. So please, find ways to take action to support yourself and to support those around you. So everyone's talking about this new normal, right? I don't know about you, but we're getting tired of hearing about this new normal. And it's hard because as the world begins to turn this corner, and we are seeing hope and we're excited about that, people are championing that new normal. However, for many, it's likely, like the slide says, that the new normal seems more new and less normal than many of us will be comfortable with. And new anything may not seem that inviting after a year of new everything. And people will have lingering effects from the isolation and the health anxieties and pandemic fatigue. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So really, it has impacted our emotional wellness. And my ask of you is that you're patient with yourself, you're patient with those around you, because this will not be like flipping a switch, kind of moving into this new life, we'll call it. And the recommendation is, this involvement of several different ingredients. So transparency and flexibility, responsiveness, and supporting our wellness. So it's going to be a little bit of everything as we move forward. What we know about disaster is that it is uncertain. Disasters are uncertain. COVID-19, I think everything about it has been predictably unpredictable. And uncertainty is what drives our anxiety. So when we talk now about reopening the world, the workplace, like I said, it's not flipping a switch. It won't be that easy. It's rather this process, than just an event. And there's still many unknowns. There's still a lot of uncertainty. So our reactions, will maybe include the lingering concerns about health risks. We may still have emotional stress and worry and depression and grief and traumatic stress. There's going to be social awkwardness. We're navigating friendships and relationships in a different way. It's been a while since we've interacted with people. And then the adjustments. For those of you tonight that are maybe returning back to your workplace or just returning, to your life as it was before. If your children are returning to school in September in a different way, this will be an adjustment. And then ongoing difficulties, sometimes with concentration and attention, because we're being pulled in so many directions, and maybe just general unease. So again, thinking about the uncertainty is what drives our anxiety, and everything about this has been pretty uncertain. And we are in uncharted waters, right? We've never been through anything like this before. And there's little research available. So the last great pandemic was 1918. Most of us were not around, and nobody left for us lessons learned, to say, hey, here's what the behavioral health impact was, read this and you'll be prepared. We in this room, we together are writing the playbook. We will leave this playbook for the next pandemic. And there's a pandemic about once a century. So we will be able to decide and research and provide for others, what were the behavioral health impacts? But, there wasn't this playbook left for us. So we're really working on it together. Because of that, we're moving our way through this together. We're learning how to adapt. We're learning what to look for in ourselves and in each other. And many of the concepts we use today didn't exist, during the last great pandemic. So, just again, thinking about together, we're going through this, these uncharted waters. So I'll very quickly kind of show you these phases of disaster, because it is important to understand that, typical phases of disaster, if we were going through a natural disaster, this is what our framework would look like. And this has been studied for many, many years. And they look at this and, again, if we think about after Superstorm Sandy in our area, this was very, very similar to what many people felt. So there was kind of this pre-crisis. There was a warning and a threat. We knew that hurricane, that superstorm was coming. And there was a very, very clear impact. And that's the part I want you to think about for a moment. And then we go through other phases. People are feeling heroic. There's that honeymoon stage. There's a disillusionment. For some, they thought, why, how can I still not be back in my home? How can I still be fighting with the insurance company? People working through grief and loss. There was a very clear anniversary. So this is typical of an event like a natural disaster. And again, I said there's this clear impact. But take a look at this pandemic planning framework, which I want you to know was put together before COVID-19. Even looking at it feels chaotic. It's very different from those typical phases of disaster. What I want you to think about is that there's no clear impact like there would be with a natural disaster. So for COVID-19, for many of us, we're still feeling the impact. Although we've had, changes in first wave, second wave, third wave, grief and loss and anger and depression, feelings of anxiety and panic, but no clear impact and no clear anniversary. And those are the differences. I'm going to go back one slide just again, so you can take a look at, this would be typical phases, things that we could predict that people would go through. This one's a little more chaotic. So I just wanted to point that out. And I said we would talk about stress, talking about the effects of stress on our body, on our mood, and our behavior. And for some of you tonight, you might be thinking, wow, you know what? I didn't realize how stressed I was. It's been a year and a half. I didn't realize the effect that it's taking on my body, my mood, and my behavior. So let's start with behavior, because this is often what people will say to us. And they may say, I've noticed. And these are people close to us who we know and we trust, our family members. They may say, I've noticed changes in your behavior. I've noticed you're not eating, or you're eating more than you were before. I've noticed you seem angry all the time, or you seem sad all the time, or you're crying. I've noticed that you're drinking more, or you're using drugs, or you've gone back to smoking. I've noticed you're withdrawing, not because of COVID-19, but because you just don't want to be around anyone. I've noticed you're not exercising like you used to. So when we think about behavior, we may not recognize it in ourselves right away, but typically people around us will notice. So let's go back a little bit on this slide. Our mood. You may feel more anxious, restless. You may have lack of concentration, motivation, or focus. You might be feeling overwhelmed and angry and irritable and sad. So those effects of stress may start to change our mood. And then our body, sometimes we don't even realize it's stress. So I don't know about you, sometimes I feel it in my neck. I feel that, muscle tension. Some of you may have chest pain or fatigue, changes in your appetite, changes in energy. But what we want to think about is that even though these are common effects of stress, has this chronic stress over this period of time started to show itself in these different ways? So I'll ask you tonight to really think about, how is stress impacting you? And if you have a little piece of paper, or your phone, and you're sitting there this evening, make a little note. Look at this chart and maybe make a note to yourself. We don't have to share this part, but write down something on this chart that you are feeling, that you are experiencing. Or maybe someone in your family, someone close to us said, hey, I've noticed changes in your behavior. And just take note of that, because if we can identify what's stressing us, then we can work on well-being and work on some coping strategies. So I'll ask, what is stressing you? So I do invite you now to please write in the chat, what is stressing you? Share it with me, share it with everybody. Maybe we'll be able to read a few, but just, take it to the chat and let me know, what is stressing you? I'm going to give you a moment to do that, and we'll be able to take a look. And if you have a lot of things, go ahead, write them all. But give us an idea of what's been going on. So I'll pause for a minute, see if people are writing some things. And even if we don't read them out loud, you can kind of share them with each other, which is really nice.
So Jamie, there's a question in the chat as people write. The question is, with all the new revealed challenges, especially for people of color, do you anticipate a sharp rise in mental health challenges?
So we are noticing already, and I don't want to say a sharp rise in mental health challenges, but we are noticing people are reaching out for support more than they were before. And we don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. We see it as a good thing that people are reaching out and asking for help. One of the ways we've noticed that is our call line. The numbers have doubled at our organization of people asking for resources, asking for emotional support, and asking for linkage and referral. As an agency, we're really working hard to respond to families of color, and we have launched a program very specific for families of color impacted by COVID-19. So thank you for the question. And I do think we are, just seeing some increases in individuals reaching out for help. I think it's a little too early to know what the true impact will be of mental health challenges or mental health disorders. But like you, I'm going to be watching that research to see, if we do see a spike in that. I'm just not sure yet.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is anyone sharing what's stressing them out?
We have one, caregiving and workload.
Yeah, definitely. And when you think about that, those roles for many of us have come together, not because we wanted them to, but the workload, and for some of us working remotely and caregiving at the same time, everything's become meshed together for so many. So thank you for sharing that. I think many people can agree.
We have also family health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that is not even related to COVID, but caring for family that might have other health issues, or worrying for family around COVID. Thank you for sharing. Anything else coming in?
Not yet, Jamie.
Okay. So one of the other things, and again, feel free to keep writing in the chat as I go through these slides. There may be some things on here that really speak to you. These are some of the pandemic-related disruptions we see as primary effects. So I'm going to guess that everybody here tonight has felt pieces of this. Just our normal everyday patterns, school, life, family gatherings, holidays have been disrupted. Our family relationships, our roles and responsibilities have been impacted. And then our work life, whether you're now working remotely or in person, or you've gone back and forth a couple times, your work setting could be different. The way you function and do your work duties, your meetings, your professional relationships, for many of us, that has changed. And then our civic and community engagement or community involvement, for many, has come to a stop. it's coming back. But if that was a piece of your wellness, and that was one of your wellness strategies, being part of your community, and you had to stop doing that, that was probably really difficult. And then the bottom one, our cultural rituals, marriages and funerals and births and graduations, we can go on and on. So there's been so many primary effects that have disrupted our lives around COVID-19 and have impacted our mental health and our well-being. So let's take a look at this very busy slide. There's a lot on here. And these are some of the mental health and psychosocial reactions that we have felt. What I'd like you to do is take a look at this slide. And if there's one or two things that speak to you, write them in the chat. If there's something that you have felt throughout this pandemic and you want to share it with the rest of us, go ahead and do that. And there's so many on here. You'll notice some of those are more difficult: stress, anxiety, worry, fear, and panic. But then there's also some positive ones, increased generosity, increased sense of gratitude, resiliency. So go ahead and share, if you wouldn't mind, in the chat, just some of the reactions you have felt over this last year and a half as related to COVID-19 and your own mental health and wellness. And maybe we'll be able to read a few. We'll give you a moment to, just kind of share with the group. Chances are, if you're feeling it, someone else in the room is also. Anything coming in just yet?
Not yet, but I was going to say on the previous one, there are a couple more. So workload,
yeah, share.
job, what was stressing people out. People are noticing how angry people are getting and how hateful people are being in certain situations. So those are the ones from the stress, things that
Thank
were.
you for sharing that. And I know there's a little delay with the YouTube, so we're definitely going to be patient with that. If you notice I look down, it's because I'm taking notes, and I specifically wrote down the anger and the hatefulness, because that's been really difficult. I think that we've experienced a lot of that right now. And in a time where it's so hard and we're trying so hard to keep ourselves well, to be surrounded by pieces of that just makes it even more difficult. So thank you for sharing that for those who shared.
So there's a couple. We have grief and loss reactions or responses. We have sleep and appetite disturbances. We have irritability and feeling overwhelmed. We have stress, anxiety, irritability, and difficulties focusing.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for reading all of those for us. So for those of you who shared, I thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing. And I would bet many of us can relate to some of those feelings. And we are going to spend just a couple minutes talking about grief and loss shortly. So I'm glad that someone did share that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We have a couple more, Jamie, before you go on. We have lack of sleep. Lack of sleep, increased generosity, ordinary sadness, crying, anger, and sleep. We also have a question.
Sure.
This is: what advice do you have for churches, jobs, or other events that are now allowing interaction as we used to know it? Is there a suggested way to re-engage?
I would say do it at your own pace. Be really sure you're doing what's comfortable for you. We're running our own race here, not to compare yourself to anyone else. So if you're comfortable reintegrating in a way that's slow, kind of taking baby steps, go ahead and do it that way. It would be like just joining that group, that church, that school, your job for the first time. So allow yourself to enter as if it was starting over again, not going back expecting things to be exactly the same. And I think that's been difficult for some of us. We're going back and we just think it's going to be the same, and it's not. It won't be, and it can't be. It will not be the same experience it was before COVID. So I think maybe just allowing yourself that time and the patience is something I would recommend. I hope that helps.
Definitely. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah. So we'll go on a little bit and we can always come back to those. So many people, including myself, have said, why do I feel so stressed? Why am I so tired? And when you think about those of us who may be working or schooling from home, those of us who have slowed down our schedule a little bit and are still saying, why am I so tired? I don't even have to leave my house. Early on in COVID, I can't leave my house. I don't even have to get out of my pajamas, but yet I'm tired and I'm stressed. What are the reasons? We'll talk about a few of them. One is that we have been in this fight or flight for way too long, and think about that. Our bodies and our minds, we're not wired to be in this heightened sense of arousal for a long period of time. So this brain and stress response is one reason why we're stressed and we're exhausted, because we kind of have had this, I always say it's like running in the background for this period of time. And again, we're not used to feeling this, or, and even if we don't know what's happening, maybe our body's reacting a certain way. Maybe our mood is reacting a certain way. We don't even realize why. We also want to think about that cumulative stress. So that's kind of that buildup. You'll see my little picture here, the Jenga puzzle. But when you think about everything we've taken on over this last year, it's a lot. So it's piling and it's piling and it's piling. And maybe we're taking on a lot of big stuff. And then something small happens and it kind of topples us over and pushes us, to the point where we break down and we're upset and we're crying. And it could be something small. So maybe all year you've taken on all the big stuff. Maybe you've lost a loved one. Maybe you've taken care of family. Maybe you've continued to work in the community as a first responder and you've kept it together. And then something small happens, you get a flat tire and you lose it. And you think to yourself, why this? Why now? Because for some of us, it's only going to take that one more thing, So what we want to think about is, how do we avoid this? How do we avoid the buildup? The way we can do that is by being really proactive with our wellness. And we'll talk about that. And some of you tonight might be thinking, as I'm saying it, like, wow, yeah, I have felt that. I have felt that one last thing brought me to tears and I held it together for all the big stuff. So really thinking about how the stress builds up on us. And then we want to spend a little time talking about pandemic fatigue. And this is a term a lot of people are throwing around. And you might think to yourself, well, what the heck does it mean? Does it just mean we're tired of the pandemic? Well, no, not exactly. So pandemic fatigue is not a diagnosis, but it does describe what many people are feeling. They're exhausted. They are seriously fatigued, but it's more than that. It's more complicated than that, because it's 16 months of ongoing, unrelenting stress, chronic stress, unrelenting crisis that we've been in. So in general, the term, is being used to explain why some people are being less careful. So you may think to yourself, my gosh, this person is caring and intelligent and selfless, and yet they're being less careful around the pandemic. I don't get it. I don't understand why. A piece of that could be pandemic fatigue. It could be that our bodies and our brains are so tired that we've just gotten used to this anxiety. It's almost like become that new normal of, all right, well, it is what it is. And people become less anxious, not because they want to, not because they want to engage in risky activity or they want to hurt someone else. But for some of us, maybe our brain and our body is just getting used to this, and it's a coping way that we survive. So that's a piece of pandemic fatigue that I wanted to point out, because sometimes people will say, why now would you be less careful? The other thing is, we want to think about, our body isn't so good at handling chronic stress. We're good at short, bursts of stress, short stress. We know what to do with it. We're used to it. We can move on from it. But when we have chronic stress over time, it gradually starts to impact us. And we can have things like, increased heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rates, muscle tension. We know that when our body is working harder than ever, it becomes really difficult to function typically and normally. So we want to think about that chronic stress almost creates a new normal inside our body. And then as it gets used to that, it can lead to health problems. Whether it is high blood pressure, heart disease, chronic pain, depression. And these things sometimes sneak up on us. We don't even realize it. So I'll ask you tonight to really think about your mental health, your emotional health, those around you. And if that stress is creeping up slowly and you're starting to recognize in yourself, hey, it's impacting my body, my mood, my mind, my soul, it's time to make some changes. So that's why I point out the pandemic fatigue. And then why are we so tired? Well, we're moving less. Many of us are moving less because of the pandemic. Our attention has become, this commodity. And at the bottom here, it says, pay attention to where you pay attention, because really our demands for attention have changed around this. And that's a piece of cognitively why we are so tired. And then there's Zoom fatigue. Even though I'm on Zoom tonight, you're on YouTube and we're all together on a screen. But when we're doing it too long, it's not great. And for those of you that are spending a lot of time in remote meetings, whether it is Zoom, Google Meets, Teams, whatever it is, those of you that have, kids at home that are virtually learning or were virtually learning all school year, it's really difficult because it's excessive, prolonged, close-up eye gaze. That's one thing. The cognitive load that it takes to be on, the virtual screen is different from in person. The increased self-evaluation. I always say, I want to be in the room with all of you. I want to look at your beautiful faces. Instead, I'm looking at myself all day when I'm doing these meetings. So, we're just looking at ourselves all day. And then that, again, the constraint on physical mobility. We're just moving less. So if someone says to you, is Zoom fatigue real? Yeah, there's a such thing. And it is impacting us. Spending a lot of our time in virtual settings and virtual meetings, it has become exhausting. It's been great to still connect with people, and I do find it important, but we have to figure out a way to set some limits around that. And then, like I said, I would touch on grief and loss for, just a moment or two, because I think it's really important. And I think amid COVID-19, many of us have experienced grief and loss. So for those of us in the space tonight who have lost someone to COVID-19, and I personally have, I am very sorry for your loss, and I want to express that. And for those who have not lost a person, a family member, a friend, but have lost other things, I want to make sure I'm honoring that, and I want you to honor your feelings. And I say that because I've talked to a lot of people this year who have said, well, I haven't lost someone, so I don't deserve to feel this way. And my answer is yes, you do. We've lost normalcy. We've lost financial security. We've lost connection and sense of safety and continuity and rituals and predictability and routine. We've lost so much. So if you feel like, well, I don't know if I should say it's grief and loss, I didn't lose someone, you're allowed to feel that. Honor those feelings, please. And then if you look at the bottom here, for some people, just anticipating grief. And this is in quotes because someone has said it. I can't remember a time now when I wasn't waiting for grief. That's extremely powerful. That's extremely significant. We want to make sure we're honoring that. We're living in this increasing state of waiting for grief because few of us have not been touched by someone's illness or someone's death around COVID-19. And we know that feeling that waiting or anticipating grief can be exhausting. And it takes a physical toll, it takes a psychological and emotional toll, and it prolongs the pain that maybe we're already feeling. So I wanted to make sure that I touched on grief and loss because it is a reaction that people are experiencing over this last year and a half and will be beyond. So here's a little cartoon, and I say, can anyone relate to this? If we were in a room together, I would say, unmute yourself and yell out yes, or write it in the chat. So we've got, person here, we'll say that's me, kind of out in the water. We've got COVID over here, a year in and out in quarantine, instability, unpredictability, uncertainty, hate crimes, the pandemic of racism that's always been with us. So much has happened in our environment. And then here's this person out here yelling, just be resilient. Like if only it were that easy, right? So how do we do that amongst everything we've been through? So I already have touched on the idea of grief and loss, the pandemic reactions we have felt, the experiences around stress. So how do we move to well-being? What can we do? So there's practical tools. And as I go through these tonight, I know you know these, but I also know that for me, I always need reminders. So we'll talk about that tonight. How do we remind ourselves to get back to a place where we are focusing on increasing our resiliency, we're improving our mental and emotional health, and we're using some of the tools that maybe we already have that we forgot. When I'm stressed, I forget my coping strategies. I need reminders. So hopefully tonight I can do that for you. So we say practice well-being by design. So what I mean by that is instead of waiting to that point where you're so stressed out and you're that Jenga puzzle toppling over, practice it by design. So making time every day, every week, all of the time to do some of those things that can reduce our stress and really increase our well-being. So talking to others for support sounds really easy to do, but sometimes we feel like we don't want to bother someone or we're not sure who to turn to. One of the things we can do is kind of map it out, write it down on paper, put yourself in the middle and then draw lines and write all the people that you would ask for support or that you would, call, text, Zoom, visit. You can even write their name and then write how you would reach out to them. You can make some closer lines for the people really close to you who are your go-tos all the time. You can make some dots a little farther out for the people that, maybe you reach out to for certain things, but talking to people for support is really helpful. Engaging in positive, distracting activities, whatever that is for you, and it will be different for each one of us. Trying your best to the extent possible to maintain a normal schedule, amidst all of this chaos that we're in. Using relaxation exercises, if that works for you. For some of us, it's not our go-to, but if it is, try to do that. Try to build it in each day. And then during your work day, build in breaks for physical activity. We know how important it is to move our bodies. We need to do that, even if it means setting a timer on your phone to remind yourself to do that during the workday. So everyone talks about self-care. And I know some people say, oh, I'm tired of hearing the word self-care, and that's okay. Maybe just focus on well-being or wellness, whatever word you like. But I do want to touch on what self-care is not. So it's not just for people who are burned out or weak. It's not something we don't have time to do. It doesn't mean we focus on ourselves and ignore others. And it is not a luxury. It's not self-indulgent. It is something that really is a necessity and that we have to be deliberate with. Because if we want to care for others, and my guess is that the people in this space tonight are typically caring for others. We're really good at that. We have to care for ourselves. So this little line at the bottom, I'm sure you've seen something like this before. It says, as you recharge your phone battery timely to give you the best output, why don't you recharge yourself timely? So I always say, I always know where my phone is. It's always charging. Look, it's right here tonight. It's plugged in. It's ready to go. Why not recharge ourselves, refuel ourselves the same way we would our phone? And then I've got a little graphic here. It just tells us, pretty much things are better when they're full, including ourselves and our spiritual and emotional gas tank. That's my favorite one on there. And then we say, consider this 3 A's approach. So the first one is adopt. So it might be adopting a new idea, a new strategy to cope with stress. Or maybe it's adapt. You kind of dig deep into your previous strategy. What's worked before? We've all been through difficult times before. We've been able to move through them. So what has worked before? Bring that strategy back out. Maybe you have to modify it a little bit. And then the most important one is to apply it. Give it a try. We know that action binds anxiety. So if we think about, okay, let me adopt a new coping strategy or adapt a previous one or one that's, working, but I need to modify it and then apply it. And continue to apply it day after day, week after week. So here's a few more tips for taking care of ourselves. And I said this earlier, accepting yourself as you are. Remember, you're running your own race, no matter what, whether it is re-entering the workplace, re-entering your church, re-entering your school. Remember that this is about you and your family. One of the things that I recently was talking about that I'm a parent, I have 2 teenagers, and I said, as a parent this year, I have felt very judged no matter what decision I made. People would ask, are you sending your kids to school? Are you keeping them home? Are they virtually learning? Are they getting vaccinated? Whatever I said, I knew there was judgment on the other side of that. And I had to get to a point where whatever decision I made was the right decision for me and my family. So I recommend the same to you. Accept yourself as you are, make the decisions that work and feel well for you. The middle one says focus on the basics. These are the things we know. We know we have to get rest and exercise and eat well and drink water, but we forget, right? We might need a Post-it note or a reminder because again, these things not only feed our body, they feed our soul, they really focus on our emotional health. So really important, just the basics. Find what makes you happy. So especially if you're caught up in taking care of all of your responsibilities, make some time to do the things that really make you happy. Practicing mindfulness. And it doesn't mean that you have to take a meditation class or a yoga class. It might just mean that you stop and you breathe, or you pray, or you just be. How many times a day do we stop and just be and be present? Sometimes that can just be the reset that we need. So again, if that's something that works for you, try it. Making small goals. I don't expect everyone to leave here tonight and then, go out and start to create, these big changes, but maybe something small. Maybe, hey, you know what? Every day this week, I'm going to take 5 minutes to myself and I'm going to practice mindfulness. Maybe I'm going to take a 15-minute walk. Maybe I'm going to write in a journal, or maybe not even a journal. Maybe I'm just going to write on a little notebook, or maybe write one note. I don't have to do a whole gratitude list. Maybe I'll write one thing I'm grateful for. Start small and kind of set those small goals and then move from there. So I like this one. You can do anything, but not everything. We have to sometimes really set some boundaries, say no to others to say yes to ourselves, and really having that tough conversation maybe with the people around you to make more time for yourself and focus on your wellness is a hard thing to do, but really important sometimes. And we deserve a break. You deserve a break. It's perfectly okay to take one. Again, sometimes we have to really focus on ourselves, and it doesn't mean we're selfish. I like this little one. It says almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. So, when you're feeling overwhelmed, take that step back and say to yourself, I deserve a break. Like I said, many of us are caretaking for other people. We are the go-to for other people when they're feeling stressed. We got to take that time for ourselves. And then you might ask, well, when is it time to ask for help? Jamie, you talked about stress and you talked about wellness, and I'm just not sure, do I need a little extra support? Is there something I should be doing more than just focusing on my coping strategies? Is it time to reach out for a different type of help? So we could talk about this all night, but I'm going to give you a very quick framework here. I say mark changes in personality, things like eating, sleeping patterns. Again, that's kind of that person in your life that says, hey, I've noticed something's different. The next one talks about difficulties coping with daily activities and responsibilities. So if the things that used to come to you really easy seem really hard now, getting up, taking a shower, getting to work, taking care of the kids, whatever it is, just seems like it's taking more effort. Maybe there's something going on. And then the last one, the 4 L's, live, laugh, love, and learn. And I always say, think about yourself truly for a moment and think about the ability you have every day to get up and live and laugh and love people and learn new things. When something starts to disrupt that, it might be time to ask for help, to ask for support. Again, this is a mini framework, only you, but really thinking about, hey, is something different? Is it time? I also like to recommend the mental health screenings. My next slide has it nice and clear here. MHAscreening.org. This is wonderful. It's free, anonymous, secure. You go right online. It'll take you a few minutes and it'll ask you about 10 questions. Really asking like, hey, in the last 2 weeks, have you fill in the blank? Have you had difficulty concentrating? Have you been more tearful than usual? Is your sleeping pattern or eating pattern off? So it's a nice way, we say here at Mental Health America, they say check up from the neck up. And I love these screening tools. It's something that we recommend all the time. We promote them a lot around Mental Health Awareness Month and Depression Screening Week, but they're important to do all the time. For those of you in the room tonight, if you have teenagers or college students, encourage them to take the screening. You can give them the website. You can do it as a parent for them. Maybe you've noticed some changes in your young person and you're concerned. But again, these are great. And if you're worried about someone else in your life, maybe you can open the conversation by saying, hey, let's do these screenings together. Let's get on our phone and try these. So I did want to leave you with that tool because I think it's a really good one. I also wanted to, very briefly just talk about some of the programs we have at the Mental Health Association. A lot of what I'm going to share with you is all virtual right now because of COVID-19. These are Zoom groups, so you can join, similar to how you're joining tonight, but, using a Zoom link. So we have a program serving families of color impacted by COVID-19. You'll see an array of different programs here. We send out a monthly calendar. You can get on our email list and we can send this to you. On this side, we have a calendar of all of our other programs focused around COVID-19 support. And I'll give you just a taste by showing you some of the flyers and the things that we do. So we have what's called Press Pause. It's nice because it's just 10 minutes in the middle of the day, maybe on your lunch break, you can zip in and out, and just a way to kind of focus on meditation, reset, relax. And we have it Monday through Thursday. The third Monday of the month, healing and conversations. We have Thankful Tuesdays on Tuesdays with Deacon Laverne Williams. We have our Women of Color discussion group, which is run by two lovely young women, Monica and Sharon. We have a group for first generation college students of color. We're just doing that over the summer. And if it takes off, we're going to keep going with that. Our Muslim mental health group on Sundays. We have our Haitian American group, and we have Spanish groups, 3 groups a week that are completely in Spanish. We have a parents group. Again, I said I'm a parent. This has been a difficult time, so it's nice for parents to come together and share. We have our mindfulness practice on Fridays. And again, these are all on Zoom. They're all free. You can come, pop in. You don't have to put your video on. You don't even have to use your real name in the screen, whatever's comfortable for you. I love these two because they're kind of focused on this stage of the pandemic, this now what? What stress are we feeling now, a year and a half in? How do we hang on to some of those healthy habits? So we have a Monday night and a Tuesday afternoon group. And then we have some really great programs for July's BIPOC Mental Health Month. So we're doing a liberation panel next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We're so excited about it. And one of our dear staff, Laverne Saunders, is going to host that. She did one last year and it was absolutely fabulous. And then our virtual performances, our mental health players, which do virtual performances really focusing on some of the challenging topics. So this summer, they're focusing on racism. They did a lot of stuff around COVID. And again, these are just fantastic programs that we offer, and they're all free and they're all, available virtually. Some trainings that we do. So for people in the room that are interested in learning more about mental health and suicide prevention, I always want to share that because I feel like everyone in our community, if we could increase our mental health literacy, if we could just talk about it more typically, if we could all be gatekeepers to learn about suicide prevention and save someone's life, it's something we want to do. And these are designed for the layperson. These trainings are not designed for mental health professionals. These are designed for everyone in the community to just be able to have some knowledge, some tools, and some steps to say to someone else, I'm concerned. To maybe say to someone else, are you thinking about suicide? So we really teach you that in these classes that are designed for the public. So I wanted to just share those with you. And you can get all this information on our website. And I'm going to pause there. I think I did okay. We're just about at 10 of 8. I tried to get everything in the time frame. Please feel free to email me with any questions, any follow-up. My email is here, jangelini@mhanj.org. And our website is there too. And I thank you. I think we have some time for some questions. And I'm just thankful that you spent the time with me tonight to talk about mental health and wellness. I really appreciate it.
Jamie, there is a question. How do we deal with quiet suffering?
So is that when we're concerned about someone and they're not really giving us too much to go on?
That's the impression I get here.
One of the things I recommend is being persistent. Sometimes there are individuals who do not want our help, or they don't know that they want our help. So I say be persistent without nagging, but continue to lean in and say, I'm still concerned. I'm still worried. I care. And continue to do that again and again and again. And that's not easy. It's not easy to do. But my recommendation is that we continue to very gently be persistent and allow that person to know, if I was as stressed out as you, wouldn't you want to help me? And those are some of the things we actually talk about in the mental health first aid class. I think there's even a slide that says, what if the person doesn't want our help? And we kind of go through that, but it's difficult sometimes.
There is another question regarding the schedule that you and the different Zoom events. We wanted to see if we could get that and send that out to people. And there was a request to get a copy of your presentation.
So what's the best way? Should I send it to you and you would be able to get it out to people?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get it.
So I'll make sure I or am able to get some of these slides out, especially some of the group information and things like that. I want to make sure everyone has access to that.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if you wanted to show, I wasn't sure how long that self-aid, first aid video was.
It's 4 minutes. Do we have time? I'd love to show it if we
I
can.
think so. I think we can go ahead and do that.
Okay, I'm going to grab that. Give me 1 moment. Thank you.
And if people have additional questions, we'll take those on YouTube. So Jamie is going to share a video regarding the first aid, the mental health first aid training that she talked about.
Yes, so we have this coming up. Okay, you can see it okay?
Yes.
For about 12. I'm Danny. I've lived with depression and anxiety for about 12 years, and today I'm going to be opening up about those mental health challenges with some complete strangers in the hopes that we can start normalizing conversations about mental health. Hi, I'm Danny. Nice to meet you.
I'm Colleen. It's nice to meet you too.
Cecilio, nice to meet you.
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
I'm doing really good. Yeah.
Doing good. Yourself?
I'm actually not doing so well today.
Okay, that's honest.
Oh, it's all right.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Okay, what's going on?
can you tell me a little bit more about it? Do you feel comfortable talking about it, or?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So I've been living with depression for a long time, and this week has been particularly hard for me. So a lot of people simply just don't know what to say and what to do when somebody opens up to them about a mental health or addiction challenge. And that's really where mental health first aid can be valuable. It teaches people a concrete action plan for starting a conversation and getting somebody the support that they need, whether that's treatment or just a non-judgmental listening ear. So was it a little unexpected when I responded that I wasn't doing well, us being complete strangers until this moment?
I'll be honest, it caught me off guard.
Yeah.
You just expect the automatic response of, how are you doing? I'm good.
When you first meet someone, here there's like a huge distance.
I always feel like, how can I help someone else? So, and I know it's hard because you just want to be like, oh, sorry, okay, let me run,
And I don't think people do it because they're inconsiderate. I think it's because they honestly just don't know what to say.
Have you talked to anyone about this?
Sometimes I just don't want to burden. Yeah.
I know it feels like that, but most of the time people want to help.
Yeah.
Like everyone kind of wants to be useful to other people, so they want to help you. So
Yeah.
don't feel like you're burdening them.
That was really nice.
That's so sweet. I totally wanted to give you a hug, and then I was like, that might be weird, but okay.
No, that was exactly what you should have said.
Myself, I was thinking okay, this person is in need of help. Try your best. Listen to them. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do is just listen.
If you had cancer, you wouldn't just try to you wouldn't will yourself to get better with that. And so I hope that people just start talking about it more.
Wouldn't it be refreshing if we could take off the mask?
Yes, absolutely. Be real people.
So how did you learn how to respond that way?
My father committed suicide when I was young, and it was like a really pivotal change. And I think I spent most of my life trying to avoid that and avoid talking about that and the shame and the guilt. So I really made this decision to learn how to interact with people and be empathetic and show people that someone does care about them even if I don't know you. I think people should just ask more questions, because it's once you get to know the person and understand that it could literally be any of us, any of us could have this at any point in our lives. How could you make a judgment on it?
Can I give you a hug?
Well, absolutely. I love hugs.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing in that. Like I mentioned, that is one of the public education trainings. And when we look at something like that, it just helps us. For one, it reminds us that mental health challenges can impact any one of us at any time. And mental health challenges are common. 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of us will be impacted. So being able to have the tools to help someone else and just having those open conversations is really important.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your time. Mental health is something that Pastor Francois is deeply invested in, and he wants us to, be a hub where people can get help. So we definitely are looking at figuring out how we might get people trained in that training. So we'll be in touch with you, and we'll be gathering names and things. So thank you for that. And I want to thank everyone who is on the line tonight. If there are any other questions that you have for Jamie, please feel free to ask them at this time. I'm grateful for this time that we've had with her, and she is a great resource. She helped us find speakers in the spring who helped us with some anxiety and stress presentations earlier this year. So we're just grateful to you. And we just want to say thank you again. And Mount Zion and everyone who is with us tonight, thank you for your time. We ask that, this is on YouTube, so we ask that you would share it with others who might be blessed and who might benefit from this. This is a conversation that our community often does not have. But we remember that in 3 John, it says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." And so God has a desire for us to prosper, even as it relates to our mental health. So if there are no further questions, we want to bid you farewell and say goodnight, but we will close out in a word of prayer at this time. Lord, we thank you for all that you have imparted to us tonight, God. Our hearts did indeed burn with just the information, God, and the revelation, God, and how we were able to connect with what was shared and how we saw ourselves even on the pages and in the conversation, God. And Lord, we ask that you would just continue to show us the way forward, that you would just continue to be God over all of it. Point us in the right directions. Give us the right prodding and the right nudging, God, that we might not avoid, God, but that we might be your hands and feet in the earth, God, that we might do the things you need us to do, that we might be your disciples all the more and be able to share and show love, God. And so I thank you, God, for the work of mental health, that you would just continue to heal hearts and heal minds, God, that we might be all that you need us to be in the world to others, God. We thank you, God, for eliminating stigma, eliminating guilt, eliminating shame, God, that we might be free to be who you created us to be. We are flawed and fabulous at the same time. And we thank you for that, God. For you, you created us in your image and you fashioned us after your likeness. And when you created us, you said, this is very good. And so for that, we're grateful. With everything we bring, we thank you, God, that you love us with an everlasting love and you desire for us to prosper. And we bless you even tonight for the presentation that Jamie presented. We pray your blessings upon her and everyone who's under the sound of my voice. In Jesus' name we pray and say amen. Amen. All right. Well, good night. Thank you again.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a